Welcome back to another News of the Week episode. So one of the more intriguing signings of this offseason have just happened today, as it is official that FC Cincinnati has signed Lucho Acosta on a DP contract, and it will be sending $250,000 general allocation money to DC United, because technically DC United still have the rights of Lucho Acosta, despite the fact that he has been playing with Atlas all this time for the past couple of years. And throughout this offseason, there has always been a question about how, when Lucho Acosta does come back to MLS, is he going to go back to DC United, or is he going to be going to FC Cincinnati? And for the past couple of weeks, the rumors has kind of tilted toward FC Cincinnati, and that he looks like he's going to be joining that team instead of reuniting with his former team. And indeed today it is the case where he is going to be going to Cincinnati, although he is going to be going there on a DP contract, which, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised they decided to give him DP amount of money, and that I'm guessing maybe they're really hoping that he is going to be back to that 2018 kind of Lucho Acosta player. And we all remember what happened in 2018 when he formed a wonderful partnership with Wayne Rooney in that DC United attack. Because if that does not work out, and if Lucho Acosta is going to be like what he has been for the past couple of years, where he hasn't been very good with either DC or at last down in Liga MX, this could be another signing for FC Cincinnati that they decide to give a player on a DP contract, and it just basically blow up in their face. Now, in terms of the $250,000 general allocation money that they gave to DC, it's definitely not as much as I thought they would give them. I thought it would have been higher than that. But that being said, when they did sign him on a DP contract, again, before, I already thought that this might be a high risk, high reward situation if FC Cincinnati decide to get Lucho Acosta. But now it really is a high risk, high reward situation where they decide to give him a DP contract and also have to pay DC an extra amount of money, because they still have the rights of Lucho Acosta. Well, now they no longer have his rights because of the allocation money they received. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, and another former MLS player that you probably might well know that is going to be returning to MLS is Victor Vasquez. And there's been some hints that Victor Vasquez may be coming back to MLS for the past couple of years. Well, today it is official that he is going to be going back to MLS, and he's actually going to be going to the Galaxy, as he is going to be signed with them and also reunite with Greg Vanney. Now, no doubt, I think this is a signing that the Galaxy are trying to get in terms of getting some depth in terms of the winger position, because there's no doubt Victor Vasquez has passed his prime. I mean, for the past, I remember back in 2016 and 2017 when he was with Toronto FC, no doubt he was by far one of their best player, and probably one of the best winger in the league, and that was kind of like the peak of Victor Vasquez, and when he was in his prime of his career. But obviously now, a couple years down the line, his career, and certainly now that he is starting to get a little bit older, yeah, they're not going to get that Victor Vasquez from that time when he was with TFC a couple of years before. But at least this is kind of a good reunion with him reuniting with his former head coach Greg Vanney. And again, I really think this is just more of a depth signing rather than the Galaxy potentially make him a starter, because they already have signed a starter winger last week. I think it was Grenzer from AS Monaco, the guy that they of course signed last week, and he's probably going to be number one in the depth chart in terms of the winger position. Now, speaking of depth and winger depth position, the New England Revolution look like they have added some more depth in terms of that winger position too, as they sign Icelandic winger. And anytime when there's a player that is from Iceland or from Scandinavia or even in Eastern Europe, I'm going to absolutely butcher their name, but I'm still going to try my best to pronounce this. I think it's Arnur Igvit Florensen. That's how you pronounce. Again, if I absolutely butcher that, I do apologize for that. But obviously, as the season goes along and as I hear the correct pronunciation of his name, eventually I'm going to get the right pronunciation of his name. And apparently this is a guy that not only he's an Icelandic winger, but he has been a big part of the Icelandic national team, play a big part during that magical quarterfinal Euro run that Iceland did in 2016 and also in the World Cup in 2018. But still, overall, I think this is again it's going to be a depth signing for the Revs, and I also have heard that he is a guy that has some versatility. So when you are able to get a depth piece to your roster and he shows some versatility, that is definitely going to be a big bonus. But again, this is another something that showed the Revs are really showing that they're going to be not only competing next season, but they are going to take that next step, and that next step is going to be going to MLS Cup heading into this upcoming season. Now, Toronto FC have inked GM Alen Curtis to a new contract, and I understand that some TFC fans are a little bit skeptical of the fact that they see their GM Alen Curtis getting a new multi-year contract, and they're probably even more skeptical now that Alen Curtis decided to get one of his old buddies, Chris Armas, as now the new head coach of TFC after replacing Greg Vanney, who decided to step down of this team. But at the same time, I still think what Alen Curtis has done in his short time with TFC has been pretty decent. I mean, he able to acquire the reigning MVP of MLS, that is Alejandro Pozuelo, in 2019, and he also was able to get this team to MLS Cup and came also close to potentially winning the Supporters Shield in 2020. And when you have a team that has a GM that is able to achieve that, know that he is definitely a good GM and he deserves a contract extension. But again, I understand why TFC fans are a little bit skeptical, because their expectation of this team after how this team has been for the past couple of years is definitely very high, and that TFC is going to be one of those teams in MLS where every single year is going to be MLS Cup or bust, or if it's going to be a year where they have to win a trophy, or else this is going to be considered a failure of the season. And I also understand that some say that he hasn't really built the core that TFC has, and that it seemed like he just kind of arrived in a good position where TFC have already have a decent core, and that all he has to do is just kind of watch this team and make sure not a lot of these players from the main core is going to be leaving off of free agency, and just kind of keep it intact. Then the team, of course, will continue to do well, and in some case he's able to do so. But I also argue the fact that again, he has made a couple of decent signing. Probably the best signing is getting Alejandro Pozuelo back in 2019, which turns out to be now going to be a player that is going to be their main number 10, and could be another player that could try to defend his crown heading into this upcoming season as the MVP of the league. Now, NYCFC have linked with San Lorenzo left back Bruno Piton, and this is kind of an interesting rumor and kind of an interesting signing if NYCFC is able to acquire him, because whenever I mention an MLS team decided to link with a player down in South America, and especially in Argentina, it's usually a guy that is going to be like a young South American player that's going to come to MLS, going to develop his career before that MLS team is going to sell off for a profit. Well, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case with this one, with Bruno Piton being 28 years old, and he's kind of a veteran player down in Argentina. But the other interesting factor of this signing is that I don't think NYCFC really need another left back, or that when I did look at this roster for NYCFC, yes, there are definitely some hole, and they do have some areas of their squad that they are a little bit thin, but fullback position is not one of them, and I'm assuming this offseason they're probably going to continue to look to try to maybe sign a couple of guys on the attack again, but I didn't think fullback was one the position that they might look. But you never know, maybe they just want to add more depth in terms of the fullback position, and as I said before, you can never have enough depth, especially the era that we are in right now, and the whole global pandemic situation that unfortunately we are living in right now. Inter Miami is looked to acquire former Arsenal West Brom fullback Karen Gibbs, and this is not only another interesting kind of rumor, but kind of a very strange rumor, the fact that Inter Miami is looking to try to acquire Karen Gibbs. And it's not weird because of the fact that, this is Inter Miami trying to get another player in England, and that I am going to assume that as we continue this off season and heading into this second season for Inter Miami, they're going to have a lot of English flair because of the fact that Phil Neville is the head coach of this team. But what's weird about this is that just a couple of days ago, they were rumored to try to get Real Madrid fullback Marcelo during the summer. David Beckham have even said that he wants to get him during the summer, knowing the fact that his contract with Real Madrid is going to end in 2022. And if they are going to get Marcelo, I don't know how they're going to potentially sign him only on a TAM contract. And this is without breaking the rules, as it seemed like that might be the case with them signing Matt Tweedy signing Matt Tweedy back in September. But that being said, if they are going to link with Marcelo and potentially sign him, why in the world are they looking to try to get another player that kind of play in a similar position that Marcelo currently playing in Karen Gibbs? And Karen Gibbs, just like another player that they recently signed in Ryan Shawcross, he's another player that, he kind of had a decent year a couple of years ago with Arsenal, but his career really kind of took a turn for its worse because he's been suffering a lot of injury. And when you sign an injury-prone kind of player from England, usually they don't work out when they do come to MLS. But it also doesn't make sense of the fact that, as I mentioned, with the whole Marcelo rumor, of the fact that if they are going to get Marcelo, why on earth are they going to also get Karen Gibbs? But we shall see whether or not if this rumor is going to be true, and if they are going to sign Karen Gibbs again. It's kind of been baffling in some of the move that Inter Miami has been making for these last couple of months and doing this off season. And I'm really, I know a lot of people are kind of making fun of Inter Miami and saying that look at all these off season moves that just make them kind of a meme club. But in my heart, I really want Inter Miami to do well here in this second season, and want to show that, that first season when they make the playoffs wasn't just because of the fact that they got the benefit of the doubt that the playoffs was extended, and that they could definitely be better heading into the second season. But when I look at some of their off-season acquisition, and especially hiring a head coach that have never had any experience in the club level, and he's stepping into a team that is really dysfunctional heading into the second season, something tells me things are not going to look well this season for Inter Miami. But again, they might prove me wrong if they do perform well in this upcoming season. But either way, moving on. Atlanta United is reported to make offer for Independiente defender Alen Franco. So this looks like is pretty much their alternative option, that they're trying to get an Argentine center back, because we know what happened last week when they were trying to get Lautaro Giannetti from Vélez Sarsfield, and they actually technically was about to sign him, and he was undergoing a medical, and unfortunately he failed the medical. So because of that, it seemed like they're going to have to look for another option, and as I said, looks like this guy is kind of their secondary option. And hopefully this time, if Atlanta is able to get him, and if he is going to go for a medical, he's going to pass the medical, and that he's going to be a player that is going to be part of this Atlanta United team for this upcoming season. Because it's clear that Atlanta, doing this offseason, they've been very active in the offseason. They pretty much just completely, well, I wouldn't say they completely gutted the team, but they pretty much been go on a spending spree with the way that they're looking to trying to add as much South American or even as much Argentine as possible to hopefully get themselves back into playoff and even MLS Cup contender heading into this upcoming season. But moving on in terms of the next news, and I got some good news for Portland Timbers fan. Sebastian Blanco looks like he is back to full training, and that Giovanni Savarese even said that he could be ready to play in April and in the CONCACAF Champions League round of 16 matchup that the Timbers are going to play in a couple of weeks. Now, I'm kind of surprised that he is now back to full training and that he is set to be able to play in April, because, I know that he suffered that torn ACL back in September, and usually torn ACL injury, they do take a while to kind of recover, maybe take about 9 to 12 months to recover. Although, that being said, there are situations where we've seen players that are able to recover from a torn ACL, like for only about 6 or 7 months. Carlos Gil is a great example where I think he only took like 6 months off after he suffered a torn ACL, and he's back with the New England team for the latter part of the season. But, as for Sebastian Blanco, it's great to see that he's back to full training and he could potentially be able to be playing for this Timbers team again. But I think for the Timbers, what is really best for them is that they don't want to rush him, and especially the fact that it's shown last season that the Timbers, even without Sebastian Blanco for majority of the year, they still look like a decent attacking team, and maybe even a more dangerous attacking team than when they had Sebastian Blanco during the beginning and in the MLS is back tournament. So yeah, we shall see whether or not if he is going to be back playing in April and be back playing for this team and fully recover from that torn ACL that he suffered last season. But now moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Montreal president Kevin Gibbs has issued his frustration about his team unable to be awarded the CCL spot, and also issued the fact that he was very frustrated with the Canadian Soccer Association decision to award Toronto a spot to go into CCL and be the Canadian representative of that CCL spot heading into this upcoming competition. Now, as much as I know there's a lot of people are saying that this is an absolute moronic kind of statement that Montreal president Kevin Gilmore is saying, in some way I do think he has a point of showing his frustration, and that he was hoping maybe the CSA was going to be like the US Soccer Federation, where how the US Soccer Federation awarded Atlanta the spot in CCL because there was no US Open Cup, and they decided to kind of award the last US Open Cup winner since there was no US Open Cup taking place in 2020, and Kevin Gilmore is thinking that the CSA should have just done the same thing, where since there was no Canadian Championship technically in 2020, you might as well just award it to the team that of course won the last Canadian Championship, which was Montreal in this case. But at the same time, the counter argument to that is that during last season, when during phase 1, remember when the Canadian team was facing off against each other, and I didn't actually mention a lot how when the Canadian team was facing off against each other, it was really for them to be basically fighting for the rights to be representing as the MLS team out of Canada in the Canadian Championship, and Montreal weren't able to finish first in that spot. TFC was able to do so. So if you want to use that as a counter argument, it's pretty much valid of the reason why Montreal probably don't deserve to make it to CCL. But yeah, again, I can understand the frustration that Kevin Gilmore has had, but there's definitely a reason why Montreal probably should not be the team that represent Canada in CCL heading into this upcoming season. But yeah, moving on into the last two news, which involve the national team. Jackson Yu is now going to be named the captain for the U.S. Olympic qualifier team, and very happy to see Jackson Yu able to name as the captain, and that rightfully so, that he deserved the captaincy, knowing the fact that he is one of the most experienced player in that U.S. Olympic qualifier team. And also, tomorrow is going to be the beginning of the Olympic qualifier in the CONCACAF region, and the U.S. is going to be taking on Costa Rica tomorrow, which I, of course, will definitely watch that game because it's going to be on FS1, and I'll also will be doing a review of that game after the match is going to finish. But, that game is definitely going to be probably the biggest game for the U.S. heading into this qualifier, because, I think that is a game that could potentially decide who, of course, is going to move on in that second spot in Group A of the CONCACAF Olympic qualifier team. I mean, when you look at Group A, you got teams like Mexico, the U.S., Costa Rica, and Dominican Republic. Mexico obviously is probably going to finish top spot in that group, so that pretty much just leaves the U.S. and Costa Rica kind of fighting out for that second position. And again, that's why I think that game could really decide whether or not if the U.S. is going to potentially move on into the semifinal, which is a chance for them to potentially win that semifinal to move them to get themselves into the Olympics in a couple of months. Now, moving on into the last news, and speaking of the national team, the U.S. men's national team has named the 26-player roster for the March friendlies, and I'm not really going to kind of look up and kind of tell you who exactly these 26 players are, because most of these players are pretty much going to be players that is currently playing in Europe, and that this is kind of almost like a U.S. men's national team January camp, but only kind of the European version. And for a U.S. player that is currently playing for a European club, they basically get a chance to join the U.S. men's national team, play a couple of cupcake friendly game, and hope that maybe potentially in the future they can lock up a spot in the U.S. men's national team. Although I think this kind of January camp, but it's a European version, might mean more than the actual January camp, because there's a lot of European, or there's a lot of U.S. player that's currently playing for a European club that could potentially not only represent the U.S. men's national team in the qualifier, but could really be the future of the U.S. men's national team, and we could potentially see them in the 2022 World Cup. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news. And as always, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.